Legislation banning pit bulls and a number of other terriers in the province of Ontario came into force more than a decade ago. And although the howls of protest over that bill have quieted some, the incidence of the dog bites and attacks it aimed to stop remain fairly high. To explore why and what might be done about it, we're joined by Karen Lyles. She's owner and head trainer at the Toronto Centre for Canine Education. And Lee Neal is here. She's assistant professor at the Ontario Veterinary College at the University of Guelph. And it's a delight to welcome you two here to TVO tonight to talk about what we're going to do about this. Karen, let's start with you.
Sure.
The dogs that are covered under the ban include what?
American pit bulls, Staffordshire terriers, and dogs that may look something like those.
But aren't
which
those?
is a very loose description.
Sounds like a big net.
It is.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Does it cover a bunch of things that you think ought not to be covered?
Yes.
It does. Okay. Well, let's go back for a second. How'd you get into this in the first place, dog training?
I adopted a very bad dog. So
Bad meaning what?
he was a shelter dog. He had just been hit by a car and lost his back leg, and brought him home. And within 2 weeks, he bit 3 dogs. Sent them all to hospital, and realized we needed some training. So I hired a trainer who came and worked with us. And from there, I was kind of hooked on how to change behavior, and decided to do an apprenticeship and do some further study into psychology and animal behavior learning theory.
Was that your first dog?
That was not it was my first adult dog. Growing
dog
up,
as a
we always
kid.
had dogs.
Okay.
But I would say my parents would take responsibility for those ones.
Why did you want to adopt a dog that had obvious, profound difficulties?
I'm a sucker.
Aren't we all at
He
some
was
level?
so handsome, so I had to take him. And he was the best decision I ever made. He taught me everything I know.
Huh. Lee, I want to follow up on the biting angle there. Do we know why dogs bite?
I mean, it really depends on what type of aggression we're talking about. There's lots of different reasons why dogs bite, but quite a bit of it boils down to them feeling threatened in some way. So either feeling physically threatened or feeling that somebody might take something away from them that they really highly value. So those are some of the key reasons why we see dog bites.
That suggests it's more a defensive thing as opposed to an aggressive thing.
Absolutely, and it's really, a lot of it is really about the people that they're interacting with rather than the dog themselves. Quite often they're showing signals that show us that they're really uncomfortable, and we're just not listening.
What kind of issues do you see when you are training dogs that we think of as being typically aggressive?
Exactly what Lee said. It's a lot of dogs who have fear-based or anxiety-based aggression or reactivity. And so that's kind of the number one behavior challenge that we see. We specialize in aggression. And again, it's, if a dog is feeling threatened or hasn't had their signals, responded to accordingly, they're going to react in a pretty obnoxious way.
And Lee, is it the dogs that Ontario has banned that tend to be the aggressive dogs that we're talking about here?
I mean, it's interesting. So when you actually look at the breakdown in the studies in terms of which dogs are most aggressive, we're talking about Chihuahuas, Dachshunds, Beagles, and so on.
Okay, they haven't been banned last I checked.
No, absolutely not. So Pit Bulls come up high on the scale for dog-dog aggression, but not aggression towards people, which is what the ban is really geared towards. And I guess when it really comes down to is that we're banning based on potential for damage. We're not really banning based on the dogs that are most aggressive, it seems like.
Okay, but we do have to face facts. No one's going to be particularly scared about a dachshund and what a dachshund is, or a Chihuahua is able to do. We get worried about pit bulls.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we do have a higher potential for damage with some of these larger dogs, but there are other dogs that are also within that continuum that we don't worry about in terms of our breed-specific legislation. So there's a discrepancy there that doesn't really make sense.
Do you think we should be worrying about these other ones?
Maybe that's getting deeper into the topic, but what it really comes down to is that we need to be worrying about all dogs. So it's not about a specific breed, it's about specific dogs that have issues. And so really the breed-specific legislation isn't the best solution when it comes right down to it.
Okay, we have a better understanding, I think, now about why dogs bite. Do dogs ever bite for no reason at all?
Probably not. It doesn't make sense, right? So animals are stimulus response. So they see a stimulus, they respond to it. And so realistically, they're not going to bite for no reason. They don't just wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go bite something. It's really that something happens and then they respond to it.
Karen, is that your understanding also?
Absolutely. There is something called idiopathic aggression, which is really aggression for no reason or that has no cause. But it's such an impossible thing to prove because you would have to rule out every medical reason that a dog could be reacting, and no one's really going to do that.
What
right?
about breeding aggression into a dog? That's a thing, isn't it?
Well, it's always genetics and environment, right? So you have both, and absolutely we'll see a lot of inbreeding these days because of puppy mills and backyard breeding. And so that, of course, if you're going to take two dogs who are both showing signs of aggression and you bring them together and you produce a litter, you're probably going to be seeing some aggression in those puppies.
Okay, here is, we're going to call this next graphic that we're going to show here, educating owners. Because I think you've both said at the end of the day, it comes down to the people, not necessarily the dogs. Dog owner perceptions. The Toronto Municipal Licensing and Standards surveyed 1,600 people, both dog owners and non-dog owners, as part of a dog owner bylaw review. And here's what they found. 56% did not know who to report bites to. 78% think that the City of Toronto should increase public awareness and information of dog owner bylaws. And 60% think that the fines ought to be increased. Karen, do you think increasing public awareness and raising fines would be enough to deal with this issue?
I think it would be a start. Being a positive reinforcement trainer, I'm probably going to err on the side of let's reward those who are behaving appropriately. And so perhaps people who take preventative measures by bringing their puppies to a great puppy socialization program to have that sort of behavioral vaccine would be fantastic. And people who are really preventative in their care in the sense of using humane methods as opposed to the old school tools and techniques. Perhaps they could have a break on their licensing fees or home insurance or pet insurance. Fines, I think there is a place for those, and I think they should be high enough to deter anyone from, being negligent.
Does that ever really happen, fines? I mean, we go to parks all the time and see dogs misbehaving. I've never seen a dog or an owner get fined before.
I've seen it happen before,
You have?
usually in the larger off-leash areas like Cherry Beach and places like that, where the dogs may not be licensed or they're off-leash in an area where they shouldn't be. But it's not like we have enough animal control officers to be monitoring at all times.
Right. If you were to make a checklist of here's what constitutes being a responsible dog owner, tell me some of the things on the checklist.
I mean, I think Karen's mentioned some of them. So it's that early socialization and training, making sure that that's happening, making sure that dog owners understand dog signals so that they're able to respond to them appropriately, that they're teaching other people around them how to properly interact with their dog, specifically children. Children are at a really high risk for bites. So making sure that their own children and children that interact with their dog are educated about what's appropriate. I mean, I think that those are some of the key things that we really need to be thinking about.
Kids are at high risk because?
For a number of different reasons. First of all, they're loud. They're really fast. They play with animals in inappropriate ways sometimes. They don't know how to respect those signals innately. We need to teach them about it. So there's a lot of different things going on. And I mean, I think a big part of it is that adults aren't properly monitoring children when they're interacting with dogs. So they're just really not, paying attention.
So more
to
education for kids, more education for adults too, I guess.
Absolutely.
Like what? What kinds of things what do we need to know more of?
I think the signal side of it, really. I mean, the way to prevent dog aggression is to not push dogs in situations where they're really uncomfortable. And so it's just, if you can recognize when a dog is fearful, then you can avoid pushing them to the point where they feel like they need to behave aggressively.
Well, let's do, for instance, I mean, probably everybody watching this program at some point in their day is going to be walking down the street and seeing somebody walking their dog. What don't you do? I mean, every time you see a dog, you want to go up and pat the dog. What don't you do?
You don't lean over the dog. You don't approach the dog just sort of indiscriminately. You prefer, it's better to let them come to you if possible. Just basically trying to be non-threatening. So if the dog is uncomfortable, turning sideways, not staring directly at them, not doing things that primates really like to do, like hugging and so on. So all of these things are bad behavior in terms of a dog's social repertoire.
Hugging? Who hugs a dog that they don't know? People do that?
Oh, tons of people.
Hug?
Absolutely.
You would go up on the street to a dog you've never seen before and you would hug the dog?
I personally would
not.
not.
No, you would not, of course. But people do that?
They do. They do. I've had people come up to my own dog and hug and kiss and behave really inappropriately. And
do you say anything?
Oh, of course I do. I have a big mouth.
What do you say?
Yeah. I say, get your hands off my dog.
No kidding, just like that?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, oftentimes we say things to humans and they will try to find a reason to sort of turn it around, and they'll say, oh, it's okay, I'm great with dogs. And I'm thinking, that's fantastic, I'll get you a medal. However, my dog is not great with you.
And that's really the point, isn't it?
That is.
We do have to take their concerns into account here.
Absolutely. It's just like with humans. I mean, if you saw me in the street and you didn't know me, would you come up to me and start hugging me or tugging on my hair? I hope not, because you'd probably get, an earful, right? And that would be appropriate behavior for a human to respond. But with dogs, they have other signals, just like what Lee was saying. They lick their lips, they yawn, they turn their head away, they blink their eyes, and they do these funny things that we don't really read as clearly. And so it's all, they're really trying to disengage from us.
What's this business, Lee? I think you said, don't look a dog in the eye. Really? What's that about?
I mean, there's the potential that you're challenging them in that situation, that they see it as threatening, basically. So dogs don't do that. Dogs don't stare at each other in that way. So a dog might look its owner in the eye, and so there's some really cool research showing that dogs that show this direct eye contact with their owners, that there's oxytocin release and bonding. But in terms of that interaction with strangers, it's not going to be likely to be occurring. So in that context, the direct eye contact is just not polite in terms of dog behavior.
What about big dogs versus little dogs? Should they be approached or treated any differently?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think part of it is that we treat little dogs differently normally. So there's some research out there showing that our little dogs are more poorly behaved, probably because we have lower expectations for them, because they are smaller and we're able to control them better.
And we shouldn't have lower expectations for little dogs.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, a Chihuahua can be properly socialized and interact with other animals and people and be normal in the world, just like any other breed of dog.
How do I say this nicely? I mean, there are stupid dogs, right? Just like there are stupid people, there's stupid dogs.
Well, I think the
Aren't
word
there?
that we would use would be trainable or biddable. Some dogs are bred to work with humans, and so they're a lot more trainable or biddable in that sense, that they're
What'd you
more
say,
willing.
biddable?
Biddable, yeah.
How do you spell that?
Biddable.
Oh, biddable, okay.
And so they're more trainable in the sense that they've been programmed genetically to work with us. Retrievers, for example, they're bred to work with humans and to follow direction. You bring a dog like a husky into the picture, and they're more independent. They can survive in the wild without you, human. They can do their own thing, and they're a lot more independent. So they tend not to listen as quickly or be as easily trained.
Do you have a favorite breed?
I do.
Go ahead.
The German Shepherd.
Because?
I don't know what it is. It's probably from the littlest hobo, but I've had many of them. I love them so much. They're very misunderstood, but they're so brilliant.
Misunderstood because they are kind of big and intimidating looking?
They're big, they're intimidating, they do have a history of aggression. They are trained, they're not trained, they're genetically programmed to behave aggressively in certain situations, and so that kind of makes them a bit of a threat in a person's hands who may not be as educated or experienced.
How about you? You got a favorite?
I have a Shepherd Lab cross, but I'm going to have to say that they're not my favorite because they're not the perfect match for my particular family. I have small kids in that, so I think that the Labs are really versatile. Labrador Retrievers are such a versatile dog for family life and those types of things. They tend to be, on the whole, much more adaptable, willing to put up with more of our social etiquette faux pas than some of the other dogs are.
Do either of you have direct experience with pit bulls? And if so, okay, you're nodding already, Karen. How did it go?
I love them. I love them. They're so trainable, they're so affectionate, they're wonderful with humans for the most part. And this is a huge generalization because every dog is different. But I've had great experiences working with them. I would not take a pit bull and pop them into a dog park. They're not really dog people, They're
not dog dogs.
Right? They're not dog dogs,
Yeah.
but they can be very well trained and socialized, and they're lovely family pets from my own personal experience.
They are lovely family pets. Okay, I have not heard pit bulls described that way before.
Right. They're very tolerant. They're very tolerant dogs, just like what Lee was saying about Labs. We find that they are a lot more tolerant with our silly antics as humans, and trained well and given great opportunities for socialization from a young age. They're just like any other dog. the difference is, of course, just like what Lee was also saying, is the potential for damage is there. So the larger the mouth, the larger the bite.
And the research supports that. The research shows that pit bulls, when you compare them to other breeds, they're just as sociable. They have the similar rates of aggression, like relatively low rates of aggression in your normal family pets. So there's the occasional pit bull that is involved in altercations that causes an injury, but for the most part, when we look at their temperament, they're very much the same as other breeds of dogs.
So just finally going forward, what would you like to see in terms of dog owners improving the way they do what they do?
I mean, one system that's worked really well in Calgary, for example, is that they have fines involved in making sure that there's a really, really high rate of dogs being licensed, and then they're able to turn that money around and put it into education. And so, and that has reduced their dog bite rates quite a bit. And so I think really we need to be putting as much as we can into education of owners to make sure that they're behaving responsibly with their pets.
Gotcha. We should let everybody know that if they go to our website, tvo.org, there's a lot more information there about the pit bull ban, which has been in place now for more than a decade. And we're grateful to you two for coming into TVO tonight and educating us more about how to be good dog people, if you know what I mean. Thanks so much to Karen Lyles and Lee Neal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.